check it out. It's setting up the Zoom live.
Okay, great. I think you're live.
Well,
It says it's live.
yeah, I know it says, but let me see if it shows up on the thing. Can you also independently check? I think it is live.
I think we're live.
Cool.
Hello.
Hi.
We're live.
All right. Good. Okay, good. So now that the startup sequence is under control.
It's like the rocket launcher, Sandeep. I like the startup sequence.
10, 9, 8, 7. Or 1001, 1002. Like that. So yeah, welcome Aniket and Ruchika. It's been some time since I wanted to do this, and
Same here.
well, yeah. Thanks for agreeing. Taking out time in your super busy schedule. So if you don't mind, I'll introduce the two of you because maybe some people don't know you. So Aniket has a PhD in engineering from Michigan.
I thought you'd like
that. That's what we like to advertise him. Yeah. So he's Dr. Gune. And Aniket, he's one of he was chosen as like the 40 most brand innovators under 40. So he's a 40 under 40 type person. He's like the super duper successful guy.
No longer qualify.
What's that?
I no longer qualify.
Yes, but you were at one point in time.
Yeah.
And you were also the global head of product at Audible, isn't it? So
for the Amazon ecosystem.
For the Amazon, right, yeah. And currently you are also head of product for Smart Asset. It's a financial company. Yeah, I got that right. I didn't mess it up.
That's exactly. You're very smart.
And Ruchika, you have a master's from Wharton, which is like 45 minutes from where I am right now in Allentown, in Philadelphia. And currently you are the founder and CEO of Wink. And we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Huh? And before Wink, you were general manager, vice president at American Express, right?
That's right.
And you're also the chairperson of the Art of Living United States, AOLF in the United States, right? Art of Living Foundation in the USA. Yeah. Awesome. So welcome to the Physics of Pranayama channel, the place for left-brained, right-thinking people. I don't know anybody who's more left-brained and right-thinking than the two of you. So most welcome to this talk. We'll just have a chat.
Sounds awesome.
I love it.
Okay, so a PhD in engineering and MBA from Wharton. These are the classic left of the left-brained schools, isn't it? And I have experience. I went to the left of the left-brain schools at IIT Bombay, right? So how was it going through the left-brain training programs for you guys when you guys were, respectively at Michigan and Wharton?
It's a great question, and Sandeep, it's amazing that you call, at least for me, call me a left-brain person, because that's not the way I would think of myself at all. As a kid, I was far more intuitive and creative, and I remember being in advertising where those kind of qualities also valued. And I think the training of left brain has actually helped me a lot, because I think what it's done is put guardrails and some structure to the creativity. And in some ways, what it's allowed me to do is, of course, through meditation, tap into the intuition, but then be able to package it in a very rational, logical manner for people around me so they can buy into the intuition, right? So that, I think, has helped a lot through the training of being or understanding how structure and left brain thinking works. Because if it is only emotional, if it's only gut, it's very difficult for people to follow it. And for me also, how do you pressure test the gut, right? So the left brain actually allows me to pressure test the gut to say, okay, is it logically making sense, or is it just a feeling that I have or a desire that I have? Because I'm not always clear as to when it is a clear gut, but sometimes it may not be completely clear.
Yes, that's great. But so Aniket, you were introduced to meditation way before you came to the United States, right? In Pune, you did Sri Sri. No, you did
I
Siddha Samadhi Yoga (SSY).
SSY,
Yeah,
yes.
and then you did it because it was the in thing to do, and your parents says thou shall do, and you said okay, fine, I'll do it.
Uh, I think looking back, I was always open to new things. Like I did not necessarily have like a preconceived notion of what this might be. So I remember my friends made so much fun of me during those times. So much fun. Because that course basically was a 30-day program. Used to go at 6 in the morning, come out at like 9:30, 10. And then we basically learned pranayam. We learned like a meditation technique with a mantra. It was slightly different. And then we had a silence course at the end of the 30 days.
Yeah.
My friends, and it was like, I think it was 11 standard break.
Hmm.
It was during that time when like people are going out and people are doing fun things. And yeah, I used to go to this boot camp. It was really a boot camp. But it was very enjoyable because I remember there were moments of pure joy. Like during the silence course, everybody was like maintaining strict silence. But I was on a quest for finding gold spot and thumbs up at that point of time. And I was caught red-handed by the instructor, and then I tried to like bury the gold spot under the earth and all. So I mean, I have such fond memories of that.
Yeah.
The only thing I wish it was art of living.
Hmm.
Uh, but I guess everything moves in perfection.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, like I mean, it was a fun time. It was really a fun time.
Yeah, so you came out of this thing maybe after 30 days, 11th grade, so which is what, 17 years old, something like that.
16, 17.
16, 17, yeah. And then you're back in the normal world, and 16, 17 is not a very nice age group to be a little bit blue starish cuckoo type thing, People will just rip you apart. So
I
you go
was
through that?
I took it very smilingly though. That was all jokes.
Yeah. So you were Aniket Baba or something?
No, I mean they used to like just man. I at one level I wish I hadn't really said what I'm doing with my life.
Uh,
But no, I mean it was all in jest. I stayed with the practice a little bit. I just loved to close my eyes and meditate. I loved that experience, and I think at that point of time there was a seed that might have been dropped, but then life happens.
mhm.
I'm
Yes.
growing up very quickly, and meditation fell by the wayside.
Right. So how was it going through engineering school and then onwards to a PhD in engineering, knowing somewhere back there that, there is this thing I learned and I'm not doing it? Was there a little bit of a disconnect somewhere that saying, I want to go back, but, I have this stuff to do. I have these differential equations to solve and I have this integral to calculate all this stuff.
Yeah. I think the engineering phase was the phase in my life where I was just going through the motions, I feel. Like looking back now, there was a path that was carved out. My father was a mechanical engineer. So he said, okay, mechanical engineering should be it. He didn't say anything should be it, but I aspired to kind of emulate that.
Yeah.
So I did mechanical engineering. I was not very good at it. I was good at lathes and cutting and like really the hands-on work.
Mhm.
But in terms of solving differential equations and all, I was not very good.
Yeah.
I was a reasonably bright, very hardworking person to get by.
Yeah.
Right. So my proudest achievement in academics in engineering is I didn't flunk a subject.
Yeah.
I just kept making through like the 40s, and I made it. Like I just made it. And I think again, coming into an engineering program abroad was just what was done. Everybody around you did it. So I did it. And then around me in grad school, my cohort that I was housed with and living with was signed up for like PhD programs, like master's research programs or engineering PhD programs. And I just think looking back, I was just sleepwalking, like just going on a conveyor belt.
Yeah, going with the flow, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, going with the flow sounds very romantic. It was more, it was, I think, more ignorant than that.
In IIT, we had a term that's called plug flow. एक बार अंदर आया तो बाहर निकल जाएगा.
Exactly, exactly.
Like that. And Ruchika, for you, you were into like the management business type thing. I think you went to some school in Ahmedabad. I don't remember now.
Micah, yeah. Mudra Institute.
Yeah, so that was also like on the business side.
Yeah, advertising and marketing.
Advertising, marketing, right? Yeah. So you had so so, so unlike Aniket, you didn't have exposure to this meditation, breathing techniques, etc., till you finished your business school, right?
Correct. You know, it's interesting. So when I graduated from Micah, I was working in an ad agency in Bombay and Mumbai, and the agency had just acquired another small agency, and it was a boutique firm, and the one that was acquired. And I remember, because I was taking over some of the accounts of that boutique firm, I said, you know, I really need to speak to the people, understand the brand, understand, the client a little bit, because that's how takeovers happen, right? Like you need to get the history of everything. And I remember the person saying, you know, the owner who has a lot of the history, we cannot meet up for the next 2 weeks. And I'm like, why can't we meet up for the next 2 weeks? And the person said, oh, she's going she's going for art of living, where she's going to be in silence. And it's crazy because they said art of living and said silence. But what my mind took away is, oh, art of living must be like a home decoration. And I'm like, why is she going to a home decoration place and going to be in silence? So that is the first time I actually heard of art of living. And of course, something has stayed because you don't remember things like this otherwise. And then I actually met Gurudev before I actually did the course. Friends of mine at Wharton had done the art of living. In fact, my roommate and her husband had done it. So they were, my roommate would lock herself and I would hear her do Bhastrika. I didn't really know what it was. And I'm like, this sounds weird. But they talked about how it really worked. And then Gurudev was coming to Philadelphia in 2003, where I was at Wharton at the time. And friends of mine said, hey, he's going to be here. Why don't you come along? And literally the only reason I went is because I had nothing better to do. And now when I look back in retrospect, I'm like, there are no coincidences on the planet, because the chances of me showing up, if I had, a class or I had a test or anything, I wouldn't have gone. So I went there, and it was a pretty intimate group. I think there must not have been more than 50 people in there. And Gurudev.
So this was when David McColgan was in Philadelphia, right?
I think so. Yeah, there were very few people, like maybe 50, not more than 100. Like it was a small room, very, very intimate. And Gurudev led us through meditation. And that was my first experience of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And, he told us to shut our eyes, guided us through. And literally, I was opening my eyes every few seconds. I'm like, when is this going to be done? When is this going to be done? And I'm like looking at other people and their eyes are shut. And literally, I even thought, why am I sitting here? It's such a waste of time, because I'm not being able to meditate. Should I just walk away from here? The only reason I didn't walk away is I didn't know when Gurudev would get us out of meditation, and I didn't want to be disrespectful.
No.
So that's the only reason I stayed. But that day, I also recognized that I had zero control over my mind, and my mind was controlling me. So for me, that was a big aha, and I'm like, I need to do something about this.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Okay, great. So, yeah. So left brain engineering school, equally left brain business school. If you had to give your old self advice from what we know today, what would you tell your old self? To negotiate these left brain things with the right brain training, if you had to write, if let's say, there's a process, you write yourself a letter for the future, but now I'm going to do a back to the future thing. You write yourself a letter to the past. What would you say?
I mean, I would say some things to myself, and I would say some things to the education system and parenting and all of it, not just myself, saying that these practices need to be inculcated very, very early on.
Yeah.
Right. I still remember as a kid, growing up, I was very spiritual, and my grandmother and great grandmother were very, very spiritual. So literally at night, They would read me verses from the Gita and explain it to me. So the seed was there. And I think most kids have the seed. How do you start nurturing the seed much early on rather than much later when the coating has become much tougher and for the seed to crack becomes a little bit tougher? I mean, we're lucky that we're here and we've stayed on. There is no reason to attribute it to why I've stayed on with this and nothing else. Because Sandeep, I can't even tell you the number of times I've made resolutions to go to the gym regularly. Right? Doesn't last very long. Right. So, I mean, while I'm disciplined, this is one of the disciplines I've stayed with for the last, 17 odd years. So there's something over there. But I think if we can, like what we're doing now, or Gurudev's doing now with bringing it into schools and kids and in tuition, I think it's so important.
Yeah, that's lovely. Sandeep, like my left brain pursuits make me more and more right brain in some ways. And I think as Ruchika said, like, man, having this in those times would have been such a game changer, right? Because the biggest lesson from my PhD that I learned was the happiness course point. And I went through 5 years, I think of, in some ways, misery to say that, you know what, like one day I'm going to graduate. And I used to write these years in my office, small office, there was no window, right? So you almost feel like a hostage. First, like it's such a contained environment. Everybody's feeling like an imposter. You feel like everybody's smarter than you. Like this stuff is never going to end. You're basically barely making a stipend meet. But more than that, it's like the mental agony of coming to some kind of unique conclusion in the world and stamping your mark as a dissertation committee, right? That's what you need. So I should write like 2004, then it changed to 2005, then it changed to 2006. So I mean, I can't tell you how much I was looking forward to that day when I defended, right? And I would be done. Like at some point of time, you just want to get it done. And then that day came and it was a blissful day. Like it was such a nice day. But then the next day was like, now what? Right? And I think I went through 5 years of PhD to come to that moment to say, now what? Like kind of just not enjoyed these last 4.5, 5 years of PhD when I could have been doing so many more cool things. So I think if the happiness program was there and if I had heard that point and internalized it, it might have been more enjoyable. I wouldn't change a thing, but I think I would just change the way I perceived all those events when they happened.
Yeah, so you bring up an interesting point. So, I mean, a couple of our mutual friends like Bawa and Kashi and Raju Ray, all these people, I mean, we were all at IIT together. And my take on that is, I mean, I ran away from these people at IIT. These were like cuckoo people, all right. So I stayed far away from them. But now that I reflect back, and I had them on the Physics of Pranayama channel also, they didn't say it in so many words, but they were a little bit of a misfit. Because they had this full training, or not full, but extend something other than the the beaten road. They had this exposure, and it was a constant struggle for them, because there was one thing you did in a controlled setting where somebody's guiding you and you're meditating, etc., and then you came to a hostel and you came to IIT campus, and holy cow, you would be ripped apart if you're even a little bit like a weirdo. So maybe it was a blessing in disguise that you didn't have this technique.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I agree with you, Sandeep. I also think, like, looking back, I think when at least for me, when I interact with people now who are from the world that I came from, right, or have been in, I can relate back, right? I didn't turn into what you called earlier on the show a blue star overnight. I was a hard nut to crack. Like, right. I doubted, I pressure tested, I leaned in, I leaned out, I did all of that. And after all of my own journey, I have come to the conclusion, and that is why potentially, I stay as I do. But I have not forgotten what it was on day one, where I remember being in satsang. I took the course, and my mom took me for satsang. And it was, I like music, but people were dancing and moving. And I'm like, Mom, the breathing and all is fine, but who are these people? Why can't they? And I literally remember saying this, why can't they just be normal? Like, why? Like, I remember, I'm like, God, man, I want to have nothing to do with these people. And I still remember, like, I would invite friends from the art of living because I loved dancing, right? So I never had alcohol, but I would just love dancing. And the only places where you could dance in New York City were, pubs or whatever else. Right? They would convert at night into like Bollywood places, and you could dance over there. And without a drop of alcohol, I would be going, really enjoying myself, unless you did a house party, which is not really possible in small New York apartments. And I would invite my friends from the art of living initially saying, hey, let's go dance. And they'd be all into it until I told them where it was, right? And they'd be like, no, can't do it. And I'm like, why can't you balance both sides, right? Be in the world and yet kind of keep your... I found it took me time. So I am completely with you that, today when we meet people for the first time and we want them to get as into it as we are, we don't realize it. For me, it's been a 17-year journey to get where I am.
Yeah, and even now it's not very comfortable all the time, isn't it? You go to Boone and you stand in this freaking line. What the heck am I doing here? Like,
I have to say, Sandeep, you and Madhuri have been awesome in Boone. There have been many a time when I have just gotten to the line in front of you. So you've been very sweet about it.
Sandeep, how did you deal with this? Like, you are, as you mentioned, right of the right.
no, left of the left.
The left of the left, yeah. That's right of the right or left. I have no idea what is right and left now. But how was your transition? Because this is the other extreme, right? From the world you came.
It was like extremely difficult for me, Aniket. I mean, I've been highly vocal about how difficult it is. And I've shaken the boat and people have fallen into the water also, right? You know the whole story. It is still a struggle for me every day. And the reason is,
what was the moment where you say, okay, now I'm still sticking on with the struggle?
Yeah, so okay, I'll tell you. So this has become like a reverse interview for the first time, but fine. So I'll tell you what happened. After I did my first happiness program, I went there as a complete left-brain skeptic. And the instructor asks you, why are you here? At that time, we would ask the question, what brings you here? And all the people in my class were saying, oh, looking for mental peace, and I'm some bodily thing or some physical thing, some reason, right? You know what my answer was? I said, dude, I'm not here to see anything. I'm just here to see what all the fuss is all about. So that's how I started. And then I finished the happiness program. And then Madhuri and somebody, our local teacher at that time, they said, let's go to New York City for a weekend visit. So we went, we booked a hotel, we stayed there, etc. So before we go on our sightseeing thing, let's just go to this Art of Living center. And I went there, and the first thing was like all these shoes. What the heck? And it turns out that Shri was going to be there. So it was not a 5-minute thing. It was a whole day thing. I was conned into going there for 5 minutes. And then I went there and I saw all these white sheets and I'm saying, what the heck is this place? And then Guruji came and Shri came. And it was an amazing thing. I mean, he just disarms everybody and he did the meditation, etc. And I said, okay, this guy is not so bad. And then at the exit, there was suddenly a line that formed. I didn't even know what that line was. Now I know that it was a darshan line. I was just there. I was just there. Yeah. So he came and he stood in front of me and he says, he didn't even say anything. For like 10 seconds, we were just looking at each other.
Wow.
And then he says, Pucho. Means he says, ask me the question you have. And I said, okay, I have to ask. Then I said, oh, Shishi, what do you think about string theory? Because, I want to yank the chain and see if this guy is like very good. And I know that he's got some physics training, etc. I said, what do you think of string theory? And he said, finally, the physicists have figured out that everything is vibration.
Oh, wow.
And he took 2 steps ahead and then he turned around. And I'm still to this day sure that he was not talking to me. He was talking to somebody behind me. But he says, with his hand like this, I think right hand, he says, you should teach. And he went away. And I'm still to this day convinced that he was not talking to me. He was talking to somebody behind me. And I totally ignored him. But from that day onwards, Aniket, I knew that this guy was a smart person. And I had a confidence that I'm also a smart person. And I So in these question answer sessions that I was in, like, when people asked him, I started playing a game. I said, I will answer the question in my head and I will wait for Sri Sri's answer and I will score it. And I thought it will be like a, evenly thing. And it started off with Sri Sri 1, Sandeep 0, Sri Sri 10, Sandeep 0, Sri Sri 300, Sandeep 0, Sri Sri 700, Sandeep 0. I said, what the heck, this guy? Every time he cannot have the better answer than me. That's when it flipped for me. I said, all right, he's not like a normal, he's like somebody way up there. That's when it flipped for me.
Very interesting. Awesome.
So, okay, so
Sandeep, I just want to add over there one thing, because something that you said triggered, like, when did it flip for me? Like, I did the course, I loved it, I stayed with the breathing. But I remember maybe a year after, mom got me tapes for Ashtavakra. And Ashtavakra had just become open to everybody. Till then, you needed to see it in a group, only teachers. And I think it was the first time where you could actually watch Ashtavakra without a teacher being there. And it was December. I still remember there were 33 tapes. I binge watched, and I can say today, out there, I binge watched Ashtavakra like one would watch Netflix. I'm not kidding. And every time I would see a tape, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh my God, this is so nuanced. This is so intelligent. And I was like, somebody who can peel things in such a nuanced way and talk in a way where no matter where you are in the layer, you still get something. I mean, I recognize that style and I recognize what it was doing to me. And it was aha, aha, aha every time. And I'm like, I want what Gurudev has. I'm like, his ability to talk to the entire gamut and everybody feels like they're talking, he's talking to them, is phenomenal. Until date, when you see Ashtavakra, you've seen it so many times and you feel like, I didn't hear that the last time. How does that even happen?
All right, Ruchika, so I'm going to bust your bubble a little bit. You think you're a right brain person? You're the left of the left brain. I'll tell you why. In all the sessions of physics of pranayama I have ever done, nobody has asked me that, oh, how does this relate to the quantum effect of something? It happened in New York City. One and only person who asked me a quantum question on physics of pranayama is Ruchika Lal. All right. That's my case.
Off the charts, I think, on both
sides. Yeah.
Right.
Right. So, all right. So let's get back to this. You have this training, you have this meditation technique, you have all this stuff, and then you go into your workplace, and not everybody is at the same wavelength as you. How do you deal with it? How did you guys deal with it? I mean, you guys have high flying careers. I mean, you're not like, people listen to you and you got people reporting to you. Maybe you have deadlines to meet. You've got all this other corporate stuff that you have to do. How do you do it?
It's a great question. I mean, very early on, Sandeep, in my career, when I was in my first job, I was working on optimizing direct mail campaigns, right? Like this is as dry a subject as it can get. Like you get all the
operations research or OR, like
exactly, it's operations research, right? Like you're basically trying to optimize. Okay, here is all the audience and the customers and the prospects, and here are all the offers they need to get. Here are all the different products, and you're just like writing code and you're simulating with coefficients and trying to find what the optimal thing was. And there's a little bit of a funny story, so I'll say it, and I'll kind of come back to what I was, the point that I would want to make. So there were these coefficients, right? And we used to spend, I think at that point of time, I would say tens of millions of dollars on direct mail, right? Because those were the days like 2005, 2006 actually. There was not as much online focus, like all of these were new channels. So direct mail was how businesses were run. And shops that run and optimize those campaigns well did really well. So in one of my simulations, my coefficients changed because of an oversight. So think about this, right? Like for every mail piece, we're paying 33 cents.
Yeah.
And now that whole optimization is randomized.
It
I
is
think
kind of,
people appreciate the impact that has, right? And then we didn't see the results then, right? Because completely like, what happened over here this week? So I was called to the VP's office, and he said, "What happened?" So I mean, I said,
you
like,
said fat finger happened, fat finger.
yeah, I said like 0.03 moved to 0.06. It's like, and he said, "Do you know what that means?" Um, he says, "Do you see what the impact is?" And I said, "Yes, I mean, I do see the impact. It won't happen again." So basically, I made sure like that those coefficients would not be touched, right? Like, or if they touch, like somebody else QCs it. But that incident and many other incidences, not as extreme as this, made me realize that I am more comfortable working with people than machines and numbers
Hmm.
after having trained 5 or 6 years. And that is the case for actually everybody in the workplace. You
Hmm.
might be working on code, you might be working on strategy, you might be working on operational stuff, but everything in the corporate world happens through people. And it's a people to people connection that actually makes teams stronger. It's the ability to sense how to get people rallying around a vision makes teams effective. And what I have seen is over a period of time, these techniques almost have become like an accelerated MBA,
Hmm.
right? Because I used to wonder, why am I doing a PhD? Maybe I should do an MBA. Like, my mindset is much more of a people person,
Right.
driving business and strategy rather than an engineer driving like technical improvements in a product or a project. And I just feel like these skills have given an accelerated MBA in the workplace. And people don't understand like how this actually can differentiate careers if you're able to harness what the learnings have been in a practical way.
Hmm.
Just also add to it, Sandeep, you talked about how do you potentially take the two worlds, right? Your work world and your, you know, the, if I may call it, your spiritual world. I don't think they're two different worlds. And I think that is the issue that a lot of people kind of struggle with, saying that, okay, I need to fit into a corporate world and a corporate world looks like this. And who said that you needed to fit in and it needs to look a certain way? In my experience, I've been like, okay, whoever I am, and more often than not people have accepted, because we have not rattled the cages to say what is the boundary that people are willing to accept. And you can't have two worlds. You can't have, okay, I
Yeah.
Ruchika dress up and behave a certain way in one way, and completely you can't be schizophrenic or bipolar about this. So for me it's been integrating, and a lot of the things that Gurudev has talked about actually comes into use in a really big way, right? Like when you're leading teams, you recognize where people are, what they need to be supported. Even when you're like, I remember like in Amex, every 2 or 3 years, you're changing jobs and you move from one team to another team. And as a leader, you go in, and the first instinct that most leaders have is, I need to change. I see things differently. But I remember Gurudev has always said that, if there's a silk cloth in a thorny bush, you've got to do it very carefully. And for me, that has stayed. Like, okay, if I go
Yeah.
in, how silky is it and how thorny is it, and how slowly do I do it so that I don't turn people away? How do I carry people along? Right? I think so much of what Gurudev has spoken about is so applicable in the workplace.
100%.
Right. So it's applicable. Yeah, I don't disagree that it's applicable. The disconnect happens. I'm telling, like, yeah. So the disconnect happens in one of many ways. I'll give you one example. You and I might have a way of, team building, this, that, but your couple of rungs above guy has sold a bunch of cuckoo ideas up the flagpole, and now it's being pushed down on people from the way top. And there is a big disconnect. There is no easy way of you've got some marching orders which maybe is not the right direction to go. And once you have distilled up to, let's say, decision making, middle management, upper management level, all these things kick in and you can make a difference. But when you're like in the weeds type people, and you can see that there is a disconnect, people struggle. It's a real struggle.
It's a great one. I'll say a couple of things over here, and I would love for you to jump in
Yeah.
also. I think there's something to be said about controlled failure. Sometimes you'll need to let people fail. You share your point of view and say, I think this will happen. And then I think Jeff Bezos has this really good principle where you say you disagree and yet commit. So you disagree and commit. And as a leader too, and I'm sure as a parent, and Gurudev, I've seen this do, you give people enough rope. Let them figure it out themselves, because they're like, I think we need to be right. We need to do right things all the time, put so much pressure. It's okay for wrong things to happen. It'll be a learning opportunity. I was teaching this course to a CEO a couple of months back. It was a private course. And he was talking about his company. And I was asking, we're talking about failures. I don't know how that happened. And he says, failures are okay in my company. If you make a $50,000 failure, it's okay. As long as the education and the learning you get out of it is worth $100,000, I'm okay with it. And I like that perspective.
Yeah. Having seen this happen over and over again, right? There is one thing that I normally share is that you being right doesn't make somebody else wrong.
Right.
And the trick is to go back to the first principles and the assumptions where this deviation
Where
happens.
is the fork? Yes, right.
Right? Because I think what happens in companies and teams and in the workplace is people normally debate the outcomes when actually people should be debating what is the problem to be solved.
Or what's the assumptions made in the decision-making process?
Exactly. And I think that has been like one of the easiest ways to bring people on board and just engender trust so that you can be more effective and more, you're able to influence the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also feel that these techniques make us, at least it has made me more supple. So each time a problem comes to me, I look at it as a new problem. I don't have the bias of previous 7 times I have solved this, but maybe this time there is something unique about this.
Exactly.
And that clarity of perspective comes only when the way I look at these techniques is, this is a principle of indirect action. You do something, but you're actually doing something else.
Right.
You cannot work on the mind on the level of the mind. So you do this whole Bastrika and this funny pranayam stuff, but you're actually making the mind supple. And
That's
then,
right. That's
then
exactly right. I think what your thought is it's triggered a little bit of a story I can share in my own personal journey, and something that Gurudev said that really kind of helped me come above board. Right. There was a time in my career at a specific segment, like I was it. Right. It was like if you had like an org chart, I was top of the first page, essentially. Right. And it was like a great career opportunity. It stretched me no end. Um, but long story short, in a year and a half, what I found myself to be is then on the last page, bottommost right in an org chart. Like I had gone from the first page, top of the heap, to the last page, bottom of the heap. And it was stunning to me how all of this just unfolded like this, right? And basically, I opted for it. It was like I asked for it also. But when I saw those names kind of come up on the org chart, it was like, man, what just happened, right? And Gurudev talks about this. He talks about drop the emotion, learn the lesson.
right.
And in that moment, right, I remember in that conference room, this came up, and I said, okay, I'm feeling humiliated. I'm feeling so small. I'm feeling I've lost control. I've taken a step back in my career. All of that is great. I'm feeling that. I'll acknowledge it. But what have I learned from this, right? Like, and I can tell you, like, that flipped. And in a year and a half, I was able to come out of it, like in all aspects, the emotional aspect, the performance, output, outcome. Um, but small sutras like these, right, that we've kind of shared, heard, discussed in Gurudev's presence, or even through the courses, or even through just our discussions over chai, they're like a lifeboat, actually.
Yeah. 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 This is so nice that you said. What have you learned versus what is the emotional impact? most of us, and I think I want to speak in general, almost everybody,
Yeah,
we hold on to the emotion and we let go of the lesson.
correct.
And just remembering this, that drop the emotion, take the lesson. It's like the swan. You drink the milk and you remove the water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think over a period of time, you also become humble
Hmm.
because you think you're it and like, oh man, there's nobody better than you. But then you start realizing, man, there's so much else at play.
Yeah.
Everybody has so much heart and inspiration. So I think humility is the other lesson that I think comes very, very quickly.
Mhm. Yeah.
It doesn't come quickly, it'll come hard.
It'll come hard,
It'll
exactly.
come hard, right? Yeah. Eventually it'll come.
It'll come.
Okay, so I want to shift gears a little bit. Um, so I'm thinking how to frame the question. It's not that I don't know what to ask. I'm thinking how to frame it. So you have the, I don't want to say inside track, but you've seen Sri Ravi Shankar working in close proximity. Right? You've been in the immediate environment. So maybe over the years you have internalized some stuff and you had formed a way of dealing with a situation, let's say. And then you observed something that he did and you said, oh, wait a minute, I had it so ass backwards. This is the way to do it. So can you give us an example of that?
You want to go? I'm still thinking.
Okay, so just table this. Just let it go to the back burner, and we'll keep talking. And then if it comes up, then just share. No?
Yeah.
I know it's a tough question. That's why I was debating whether to even ask it or not.
It's a great question.
It's a really great question.
That's okay. So we can keep talking. So do you know?
There's so many things to unpack over there, Sandeep.
Yeah.
I'll share two things that are just coming to the fore, and it might not exactly answer what you were asking, but it'll kind of give a little bit of a flavor of like how he approaches things and situations and events and projects, and how that could be applicable. One is I remember we were traveling with him to Argentina in 2012, and there was this huge event that
Oh,
was
this was the 1 million people in the whole like. Oh, that's an amazing
a
thing.
huge event taking place. And long story short, in that event was it was so big, right? It was so big that he was playing the role of a statesperson over there, kind of giving the vision, guiding the event, the organizers, what to do, how to do it. Um, and really, it was like a remarkable event. And I remember after that event was over, there was huge, it was just massive. And then when he came back, there was somebody who had a problem in front of him, and he was so 100% there with that person, with the event completely forgotten. So in like within half an hour, what I had seen is this personality that is basically larger than life, right? And kind of leading 100,000 plus people into meditation and life skills and lessons, and then coming and like just guiding somebody individually for something that seemed very, very small, tiny. And I think what I appreciate from that is the ability to go big and go large in a company and being like strategic, but also really diving deep and being like very detailed and meticulous and not giving undue importance to one over the other. So many times like we feel, okay, now I'm a leader, like I just need to focus on strategy and like all the details can be figured. But I think I've seen him like pay so much minute attention to details, but also the big picture. And I mean, that is one of the things in product management, like every detail actually makes an impact on the customer, right? And the larger vision actually gives the container to drive that vision. That's one thing that came to my mind. The second is similar, it's in a similar vein. What I've seen Gurudev do again and again is invest. Like he's so invested in people's growth that sense of investment gives the faith that I can do it. There's so much faith, there's so much belonging, and there's so much, yes, you can. It's almost like a cheerleader, right? Yes, you can do it. And you feel this complete sense of investment from him. Yeah. Like man, he's taking care of where I need to be or where I need to go. And what I've seen in careers is, one, as a leader, you want to invest in people so that their best version comes out. But as somebody maybe who's starting out, you want to get mentors invested in your career, right? Because careers are made from people being invested in your growth.
Right.
And the more you feel invested in the companies or the mission, the people, the more people are going to invest in you. And again, I just keep seeing Gurudev do this again and again and again.
Right. So what made you, Ruchika, what made you say, all right, enough of American Express? I need to not blink, but wink.
That I've been wanting to quit for a long time. I did. I would keep going back to Gurudev every few years and say, Gurudev, can I quit now? And he would be like, no, continue.
Okay, so wait, so can I stop you there? What is with this whole necessity of asking him, oh, Gurudev, I want a dog. Should I get this dog? Oh, I want to quit my job. Should I quit my job? Just do it.
A great question. And I wish some of us were like that. I think for this one was for me, it's two things, Sandeep, because it was not just I want to quit my job. Am I running away from something, and am I running away from lessons? Right. And if sometimes when I wanted to quit, it was because I was uncomfortable. Other times I was doing really well and I'm like, there's no point to any of it. So for me, it was a bigger question of, am I doing the right thing for the longer perspective? If there are lessons to be learned over here, I might as well learn them here. If there are undoings, I'm like, because I'm going to go through it in any case, I'm going to take my mind wherever. So I might as well do it in this fine place, which is also paying me to learn these lessons, right?
Yes.
So it was more that than anything else for me.
Yeah.
And so I did ask him, and he would keep saying, go back, go back or whatever. And then ultimately he said yes. And when he said yes, I went to my boss, and I was doing supremely well, right? And my boss said, no, you can't really quit. And I was really like, my boss was amazing. So he said, Ruchika, I need another year and a year and a half from you. The projects that you're leading, you're the only one who can do it. So, can't leave it halfway through. We as a company need you. I said, okay, fine, I'll give you a year. I gave him 2. And then after that, I was like, I'm done. I really need to, I need to figure out something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I quit at that time, not really knowing what I'm going to do. I just knew I was going to take a year off and figure life out, right? Or let life figure it out for me. Better said, because normally we want to figure it out, but if you're patient enough, the answers come to you. So in that year, I traveled the world over, did all the things that I ever wanted to do. And I remember telling Aniket, if I died this year, I would be happy because I have lived my completely fulfilled. It can't get better than this. This can only go down from here. And through all of that, it became more and more clear as to what I wanted to do. Right. And I wanted to be able to bring all the things that Gurudev has given us, but also packaged in a way that the Western mind might find appealing, right? The container being far more worldly than what it is right now, because right now it's so pure, which is what is needed. But how do you also keep the container in a way that people can relate to it?
Yeah.
So it's more around that, and also getting enough money so we can put marketing dollars behind it, because as a nonprofit, we don't really have our hands tied, right? How much money can you put? Like Calm and Headspace are spending like hundreds of millions of dollars. You can't do it. So how do you kind of do it in a country where Gurudev has said again and again, marketing is so important. So from there, Winked happened.
Right. So what is Winked?
What is?
And it's not only winked, it's winked with an exclamation point.
It is an exclamation. It's a really good one. You know how Gurudev talks about when a question mark becomes an exclamation? So it's bringing wonder back. So Winked for us is, it's still a baby. So it's figuring out what it will be. But I think the intention is what Gurudev has always said, right? A smile on every face, joy. But how do you bring that? So for us, we realize that adulting is a word that the millennials use a lot. Adulting is tough and adulting is hard, and adulting is a challenge. And it is, right? As kids, I remember wanting to grow up because I thought when I grow up, I can wear mom's high heels and use makeup, and none of which that I do, but I thought that was cool. Or my brother would wear, put my dad's shaving cream on thinking, oh my God, I can grow up. And when you grow up, you realize it's not as easy. You've got to go to work, and you've got to, connect with people that you may not always get along with, and you've got to suck it up, and, there's life to be taken care of. How do you adult joyfully? How do you keep the bounce? How do you keep the beginner's mindset? How do you keep wonder and spontaneity alive? The last couple of days, New York's been amazing weather. So Aniket and myself have been going for long walks, and kids are out playing. Right?
Yes.
Play is such an important aspect of kids. And we as adults have lost play completely. Everything is so structured and so purposeful and so efficiency driven. I think it's about bringing play back into adulthood.
Yeah.
Sandeep, maybe take a sip of chai.
Sandeep being quiet is like...
No. So it's, yeah, okay, right. So being childlike is, Gurudev always says, be childlike, enthusiasm, this is that. I'll make it real for you. So let's take the Art of Living Foundation. The mission is the same: put a smile on everybody's face. It costs you $500, which is a big fraction of my take-home salary. Now,
but it's also true, Sandeep, that nobody's ever been asked not to take the course because of money. I mean, I know for a fact, being on the board, that there is a scholarship fund that a lot of people have put money behind and said, you know what, nobody, especially during COVID, should not be able to avail of this because of money.
Yes. No, I understand. So how would you, so what's the vision of Winged? So Winged is different than Art of Living, right?
Correct.
Completely different.
Correct.
So Winged is what?
It's for profit.
Yeah. So it is. This is a very interesting thing. It took me a long time to realize that being spiritual doesn't mean that you're like a pauper. You could be extremely well off and yet be spiritual. That's the right way of being.
And I also think, Sandeep, like, unless we in the world ascribe value by payment.
Yeah.
That connection has been made very deeply.
Yeah, right.
So I think we also have to realize that's the mindset. If we don't pay, we don't ascribe value. We think, what's the catch? Why this, that, right? We don't value it the same way.
No, I agree. So you see, Aniket, my journey still continues.
Such a poser, Sandeep.
I like this Bayesian approximation. Remember, you make an assumption, then you validate, and it's like Bayesian. Eventually, I will settle down.
Gives you joy in life.
Yeah, right. Course correction, all this.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great. So practically speaking, we still haven't touched on how. So right now, okay, let me put it to you this way. We've started now educating people, not people, but young children, and then teenagers in colleges, etc. And when these guys graduate, they go into the workforce and they are joining at entry level.
Correct.
And all the other so-called adults in the whole organization have not been left right-brained yet. So the entry-level guy is the bottom of the flagpole. Are we making it harder for them?
It's amazing what you've said. I think two things, right? This is real life. So when social media happened in a really big way, right? You remember there was a time when people needed to check in and you were the mayor of a place, and Instagram. Alex began something called reverse mentoring. So instead of your mentor being the senior leader, the senior leaders would have youngsters as mentors because they understand social media. They understand the mindset. They understand, like, millennials are different from Gen Zers. We literally have people who are Gen Zers come and talk to us about them and their mindset and research, right? So people are recognizing yes, it could be profitability driven, that the biggest consumers right now are millennials and very soon will be Gen Zers, right? So people are willing, senior leaders, especially who you said, are more left brain, are willing to listen to the youngsters coming in. For the first time, I've seen that happen where it's like, yes, experience is important, but what they're saying is also important, so we can kind of bring it together. The second thing I think, Sandeep, which is amazing, is if you look at a lot of the successful CEOs today, they've all embraced meditation in some way.
Oh, yeah.
So that I think is hope, that hopefully, the younger generation doesn't need to feel the tension like a lot of your colleagues or your friends did in IIT.
Yes.
It's not weird.
Yeah.
The lens that I give my teams is, actually, it doesn't matter where in the hierarchy you are, right? The person who's coming in is maybe closest to the data, right? Or the person who's coming in is closest to the customer.
Yeah.
And that is your power, right? Because what you can do is data is power, customer is power, and you wield that power and influence the rest of the organization to come to where you are seeing where your world is. So I actually feel that the hierarchy and all of that actually is this self-contained constraint that we put on ourselves. But if these practices help you see a little wider and broader, you'll use the same situation in your favor and to your advantage.
Yes, that's such a nice thing. I so love it. What you're saying is the vision becomes broad, and it becomes as broad so that a little bit obstacle comes, it doesn't block the whole vision. You can still see around the obstacle. Because if the vision is small, a little bit obstacle comes, you don't see the vision. You only see the obstacle.
Exactly.
That's such a nice way of putting it. You broaden the vision, and this is what these techniques do. They broaden the vision.
That's right.
And then the obstacles will be there, but you'll maybe sidestep them or leapfrog over them or something. Very nice. Yeah. Good. Anything else you would like to share with people that maybe I didn't ask you?
Is there anything else that you want to share, Sandeep? Like, I love your story.
Sandeep, what got you to start these conversations?
These conversations, right. So, I'm a thinker, I think. Maybe a bit too much sometimes. I don't know. And then I realized that many other people also might be thinking, but there is no platform for them to share their insights. I'm not the only guy with some couple of neurons that are firing. So many others have same neurons that are firing. So I said, all right, I'll make a space, and I call it the physics of pranayama. It's an all-encompassing umbrella thing. Anything can be spoken under this umbrella, right? And then I came up with this whole rationalization, like you said, of the pranayama techniques. And then it started like that. And that time I didn't have the vision that I'm going to do these in conversation with type series. And then one happened, and then second happened. And I said, oh, and it just happened. That's how it all started.
Amazing.
Thank you for doing this, Sandeep.
Yes, it's so much fun.
Oh, it's fun for me for sure. It's fun for me. Sometimes I put people on the hot seat, but okay.
Like growing up, right? We used to have 9 a.m. Mahabharata and Ramayana. Like 9 a.m. is Sandeep Karode on Sundays.
On Sundays, right?
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's not gone to that level of how do you say, repeatability, but yeah, because people are busy and it's difficult to find time. I mean, you guys are so gracious. I mean, for you to spend like 1 hour, it's a big deal, so I'm really grateful for you guys to take out the time to have this chat.
It is our blessing.
Yes,
Sandeep.
it is. It's potentially one of the best hours we spent today. So thank you for that.
Wow. Yeah. Well, at least she said today. So
has already been cut, so daylight savings has made like 1 less hour.
No. Yeah, no, it's great. Okay, so I don't want to. So I'm going to ask you for a favor. So I hope this is not the last time we talk. We talk on other things. Huh?
Yes, of course.
Yes, we'd love to.
Cool.
Of course.
All right, man. It's been great. Hopefully, next time we do this, we are all in the same room.
I know.
Oh, over some really good chai.
Chai and yeah, right. Right now we're having chai, but respectively made.
Correct. That's awesome.
Awesome.